Hello everybody, Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so hope you are doing well. Okay, so let's continue with this chapter. Okay, so last class we discussed about the labor market and today and as some part of the impact of the changes in the demand and supply of for labor. So in this today we'll discuss some more about this chapter. Okay, so because this chapter is a very practical one. Okay, there might be lots of graphs and stuff from this chapter. So let's see. So remember we did this movement along the demand curve for labor, right? So see, this is a downward sloping curve. um, which shows the inverse relationship or negative relationship between the wage rate and the demand for labor. So whenever the wage rate increases, demand for labor falls, and vice versa. And there were other factors as well. Okay, so if the non-wage factor changes, the demand curve shifts to the right or left. So let's like for derived demand or cost of recruitment, availability of substitute for labor, and productivity of labor. Okay, so if this kind of factor changes, there will be rightward or leftward shift. Okay. So let's do some example. Like if the um, demand for construction increases, then demand for construction worker will also increase, right? Okay, so this is an example of derived demand. So because of this, the demand curve will shift to the right, this one. Okay, because demand is increasing in this case, right? It's getting away from the zero. Next is cost of recruitment. If cost of recruitment increases, demand for labor will fall. Okay, so this is the graph. Demand curve will shift to the left. It will get closer to the zero. Next is availability of substitute of labor. So one of the example of the substitute is like machine, okay, or robot. So if machine that can replace labor, if it becomes cheaper, if machine becomes cheaper and available, then what will happen? Yeah, demand curve will fall. Okay, so again it will shift to the left. Next example is like productivity of labor. If productivity of labor increases, the demand for labor will increase as well. Okay, so it will move, shift to the right. Okay, because with the same amount of labor, you will be able to produce more, so demand will increase. Next, we had supply for labor. Mm, so again, the wage rate will cause a movement along the supply curve. Hmm, movement along the supply curve. The rise in wage will also increase the supply of wage, because higher wage rate will attract more laborers into the market, and lower wage will discourage laborers to work. So you see, again, this supply curve is showing a positive relationship between wage rate and quantity supplied of labor. And if the non-wage factor changes, there will be a shift. There will be a shift of the supply curve. It will shift to the right or left. So let's go through some examples. Like school living age. If school living age increases, that means more people are spending more time in the school. Then what will happen? Supply of labor will fall. Okay, instead of joining the labor force, they're studying and preparing themselves. So yeah, the instant effect will be like this: that supply of labor will fall. And then next we have so if supply of labor falls, it will shift to the left. Then retirement age. If retirement age increases, that means now elder people will be able to work in the labor force as well. So if retirement age increases, supply of labor will increase. It will shift to the right. Next is willingness of women to work, or the society's attitude towards the working woman. So if it is positive, then supply will increase. So it will shift to the right, away from zero. Next is immigrants. If number of immigrants increases, that means if a country allows more immigrant to its country, then supply of labor will increase. So it will shift to the right. So wage rate is basically determined by the demand and supply. So last class we did this equilibrium wage rate, which is basically where the demand and supply is equal. Okay, so demand and supply is equal. Okay, so next we have effect on the equilibrium wage and labor. Okay, so okay, let's do some example from here. Okay, like previously we talked only about demand or supply. Okay, this time we will uh, do it in a demand curve. Okay, so whenever the question will be like this, that like what will be the effect on the wage rate, just simply draw a demand and supply curve like this. Okay, you should label them properly. Okay, if your graphs are not properly labeled, then you may not get your proper marks. Okay. So see, this is the place where demand and supply is intersecting. So this place will be known as our equilibrium wage rate. And this one is quantity of, like, equilibrium quantity. Okay, so any question regarding, like, an example will be given, and if the question asks for the effect on the wage rate, this is what you'll do. Like, suppose think about the demand worker, sorry, derived demand, the construction workers example we just did. Okay, so if demand for construction worker increases, what will happen to the wage rate? Okay. Previously, I asked that if demand for construction rises, what will happen to the demand for construction worker? Now I am asking what will happen to the wage rate? Okay. So think it step by step, then it will be very easy. See, no, so if demand for construction rises, what will happen to the demand for construction worker? It will increase, right? Okay, so it will shift to the right, okay, away from zero. So let's have a parallel shift to the right. Sorry, the curves are a bit. So you can have D2 over here. Okay. D2 is the new demand curve for labor. Okay, so see, there is a new intersection point. Okay, so from then this intersection point we'll get a new wage rate. Okay, maybe W2, and a new equilibrium quantity Q2. Okay, next we'll show the effect with the help of an arrow. Okay, so there is an upward rise in the wage rate and a rightward shift for the demand curve. Okay, so next, if you are facing any problem, mm, then please ask me. Okay, so I can see some of the questions are there. Um, like someone asked Page. Okay, so, Farhan Haq Adi. Okay, so it's chapter 13. Okay, I discussed chapter. Okay, let me check the name of the chapter. Oh, sorry. This is chapter 22 and 23 I'm doing. Okay. So chapter 22 and 23. Okay. Okay. So last class we started these chapters. Okay. So yeah. Okay. Then Saira Mahmood Rishita said good morning. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Then, sir, if the productivity of she also asked a question that, sir, if the productivity of labors increases, then won't the demand decrease? No, because the amount of work available is decreasing. Yeah, this is a good perspective you mentioned. Okay, with the like you're saying over here that the productive if the productivity of labors your if it increases, okay, then you'll need less amount of labor, right? Yeah. Okay. But think about you'll need less amount of labor. With the small amount of labor you will be able to um, produce more. Okay. But at the same time you can think like this that if the productivity of labor increases, then what happens that if you compare them with an if you also have a if you have a problem with sorry so you have okay, another student have a problem with this. Okay, so what will happen that um, sorry so if the productivity of labor increases, so also think about the laborers who are unproductive. Okay, so if you compare a productive labor with an unproductive labor, what will happen? The farms will definitely look for productive labor. So demand for the productive labor will increase. Okay, the farms will be ready to pay more for this productive labor. Okay, so did you get it? The perspective you were thinking were like this: that if the demand for labor increases, if labor becomes more productive, what will happen? That you will need less amount of labor. Okay, your perspective is right, but at the same time, the demand for the productive labor will increase. Okay, as the farms can do a huge amount of work with less amount of worker. Okay, but for unproductive worker, demand will fall. Okay, that's why what I mentioned. Okay, and Farhan Hotadi also asked that will they get the slides? Yes, I will give the slide by today. Okay, yes, you'll get it in the study notes section. Okay. Okay, so please ask more questions if required, and if I'm not clear with my answer, please let me know. Okay. Okay, so let's continue with some more examples. Okay. Mm, okay, so this example was when the derived demand increases. Okay. Okay, so when the demand, sorry, the demand for construction worker increases, this will be the picture. Okay. So let's do another from the supplies example. If the okay, yeah, let's do it here. Or we can erase this one. Okay. So in this kind of question, basically what you have to do, you just need to first draw an equilibrium. Okay, that's why I'm erasing this one, so that you can understand that this is a very simple thing. You just have to draw the equilibrium first. Okay, in any kind of question, draw a simple equilibrium wage rate for just like this. Then see, if the question is like this, that if number of immigrants increases, then what will happen? Okay, if there are more immigrants in your country, so they will have more supply, right? So your supply of labor will increase. So let's use another color. Okay, yeah. So supply of labor will increase. So see, there will be a rightward shift for the supply curve. Oops. Okay, let's draw it. See, the new intersection point is here. The new equilibrium wage rate will be W2. New equilibrium quantity will be Q2. Okay, now you just have to put some arrows to show that, yeah, which way they are moving. Okay, so it's moving from it's moving to the right, away from the zero, so supply is increasing, and as the supply is increasing, the wage rate will fall. Okay. Okay, very simple. Okay, so you have lots of other case studies, activities in your book. Okay, so you should solve them. Okay, because chapter 23 is a very practical chapter. If you solve them, you'll get more understanding. And if you are facing problem with them, please let me know. Okay. Okay, then Aisha Siddiqa Saba said that she has problem with movement along the demand or supply curve. Okay, okay, we already solved this. Okay, but okay, we can again review that. Okay, so let's move to this one. Okay, so this is an example of movement along the supply curve. Okay, so see here what's happening, that as the wage rate is changing, okay, from W1 to W2, what's happening? The supply is also increasing. Okay, so wage rate is the only factor which causes the which causes sorry, which causes the movement along the demand curve. Okay, see how the supply is changing. Like in the previous case, what happened? We shifted to a totally new supply curve. But what's happening here? It's moving to a total in a new point, but within the same supply curve. Okay, so this is known as movement along the supply curve. Within the same supply curve, it's moving from one point to another. And also we can get that there is a positive relationship between the wage rate and quantity supplied. Okay, so this is an example of movement along the supply curve. The same for let's go to the demand curve. Okay, so this is an example for movement along the demand curve. Again, wage rate is the only factor which causes this. And there is an inverse relationship or negative relationship between wage rate and demand for labor. Okay, see, if the wage rate falls, um, demand increases. Okay, if the wage rate falls from 1200 to 800, the um, oops, sorry, I labeled it wrong. Uh, See, the if the wage rate falls from 1200 to 800, then the quantity demanded will increase from 5 to 7. Okay, so why this is happening? Because as the laborers are now ready to work at a lower wage rate, the firms will demand more labors now, right? Because it's getting cheaper for them, labor cost will fall, so demand will definitely increase. Okay, the farms will demand more labors now. Okay, okay, okay. So let's move to the next topic. Next, we have wage differences between different occupations. Okay, so you'll see that different people are earning different amount of wage rate in an organization or in different organizations. So what's happening actually? So the supply is the factor over here, because what's the supply of an unskilled labor and what's the supply of skilled labor and what's the supply of unskilled labor? Okay, it's not the same, right? mm, See this one. Okay, like this is the supply curve, right? Okay, and this is again another supply curve. Okay, okay, so let me change the wage rate, then you'll understand. Let's see this other color. Hmm. let's use let's use the demand curve first. Okay, demand curve is like this, maybe a simple one. Okay, so this is a demand for labor. This is the demand for labor, and this is supply for labor. This is also a supply for labor, but two different kind of situation. Okay, see for this supply curve, see the wage rate is quite high. Let's name it WS, and let's name this WU. Mhm. This quantity is QS, and this is QU. Okay, LS, LU. Okay, so what does this S and U stands for? S stands for skilled labor and U stands for unskilled labor. Okay, so what is the number of a skilled labor? The number of skilled labor is low in the society, right? In the labor market, we have a very low amount of skilled labor, right? Because skill takes time, right? If you want to make someone skilled, it takes time. It's not easy to get a skill, right? Like think about a doctor. Okay, so can you become a doctor within few days or few months, or maybe few years? It's not even possible within few years. Okay, you need to work for you need to train yourself for a long period of time. Okay? So see that that's why the supply of skilled labor is always low. And let's see what it says is the supply of skilled labor is steeper. See, it's steep like a mountain, right? So very it's almost vertical. Okay, and if you and let's see what's the unskilled labor like. It's flatter. Okay. So what's happening that it's very easy to increase the number of unskilled labor. Like who is unskilled labor? Almost everybody is unskilled labor. Okay, you don't need a training for to become an unskilled labor. Everybody is an unskilled labor. But if you want skill in particular particular work, then definitely you need training. So that's why supply of skilled labor is always lower than the unskilled labor, and it's also skilled labor is also steeper. Okay, that means it's very difficult to increase. Okay, in inelastic. Okay, we you already did inelastic and elastic in class 8. Hopefully, if you have any problem, please let me know. So the it's very difficult to train. So that's why the supply of unskilled skilled labor is also inelastic. It has an inelastic supply, and supply of unskilled labor is very easy to provide. You can increase them very easily. So it's very then so that's why it's flatter. Okay, it's elastic. We can you can easily respond and increase the number of supply of unskilled labor. Okay, so please let me know if you are having any problem with this. Okay. Okay. So we are almost over with our class. Okay. So so in the next we already discussed about the trade union, and mm, you so hopefully we'll start this chapter 24 in the next class. Okay. And but if you're facing any problem, please let me know. I'll um, uh, discuss more about these chapters. Okay, this because this is a very practical chapter. Yeah, problem may arise. Okay, so please let me know, and I will upload this slide by today, inshallah. Okay, see you everybody. Thank you. See you in the next class, inshallah.